The air in the Imperial Council chamber was thick with arrogance. Gilded banners of the Galactic Empire hung from the domed ceiling, their golden insignias glinting under artificial sunlight. Rows of high-ranking officials, adorned in regal attire, lounged in their elevated seats, their expressions ranging from amusement to outright dismissal. Commander Ralvek stood at the center of the vast hall, a lone figure before the most powerful beings in the Empire. His deep-set eyes flicked across the assembly, searching for even a trace of concern. He found none. "I was there," Ralvek began, his voice a low growl. "I saw what they can do." A murmur rippled through the chamber. High Chancellor Verax, draped in the flowing robes of his station, leaned forward, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yes, yes, Commander. We have all read your reports. But surely you do not expect us to believe that an undeveloped, newly spacefaring species is capable of—" He waved a dismissive hand. "Whatever horrors you claim to have witnessed?" Ralvek's fingers curled into a fist. He had expected skepticism, but the sheer ignorance on display made his scars itch. "They do not fight like us," he pressed, his voice firm. "They do not think like us. You believe war is a matter of numbers, of superior firepower. That is where your mistake lies." Verax chuckled, the sound rich with condescension. "Enlighten us, then. What makes these humans so terrifying?" Ralvek exhaled sharply. "We had them surrounded," he said, his mind dragging him back to that blood-soaked battlefield on Dravis 4. "Outnumbered, outgunned, no chance of reinforcement. Any other species would have surrendered." His throat tightened as the memories sharpened. "They didn't surrender." The chamber fell silent. Ralvek's voice darkened. "They adapted. They turned our own tactics against us. They feigned retreats, lured us into kill zones. Their soldiers fought with a desperation I had never seen before. Even when we cut them down, the wounded kept coming. Some fought with their bare hands." One of the council members scoffed. "Barbaric." Ralvek's eyes flashed. "Efficient," he corrected. "They do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight to win, no matter the cost." Another official, a wizened strategist named Zelkor, tapped his fingers against the marble table. "This all sounds quite dramatic, Commander. But let us be rational. The Empire has stood for thousands of years. Our fleets are unmatched, our technology centuries ahead of theirs. A few, stubborn ground skirmishes do not equate to true military might." Ralvek clenched his jaw. "And that is precisely why you will lose." Laughter erupted from a section of the chamber. Verax spread his arms, as if indulging a child's fantasy. "Lose? To a species that has yet to master interstellar travel without relying on primitive combustion engines?" Ralvek's hands trembled, not with fear, but with frustration. "You speak of their technology," he said coldly. "I speak of their minds." He took a step forward. "Have you studied their history? Their wars?" Verax waved a hand. "A few planetary conflicts. Petty tribal skirmishes." Ralvek let out a bitter laugh. "They have warred with themselves for their entire existence. They refined it. Perfected it. Their species does not fear conflict, it thrives in it." He let the words settle before delivering his final blow. "And now you wish to bring war to them." The laughter died. Ralvek turned his gaze to the council members who had yet to speak. He saw hesitation. Doubt. "Good. You believe you will march into their worlds unchallenged," he continued. "That they will bow to your superior fleets, your grand empire. But I have fought them. I have seen them. You will not find submission. You will not find fear." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You will find an enemy that will never stop. Never break. Never yield." Silence swallowed the chamber whole. Then Verax stood. He descended the steps from his throne-like seat, slow and deliberate, until he stood mere inches from Ralvek. The High Chancellor was taller, his presence commanding. But his voice dripped with mockery. "Are you afraid, Commander?" Ralvek met his gaze, unflinching. "You should be." Verax chuckled and turned to face the council. Enough of this theatrics. Earth will be brought to heel. Their soldiers, whatever their reputation, will crumble before the might of the Empire. He cast a sideways glance at Ralvik. Let them fight. It will only make their defeat all the more entertaining. Ralvik felt the weight of inevitability settle on his chest. They will not fight like you expect, he murmured. And when your armies begin to fall, when your fleets burn, when the Empire finally understands what it has unleashed, you will remember this day. He turned to leave, his final words echoing through the chamber like a funeral bell. I only pray that, when you do, it is not too late. The Imperial fleet descended upon the colony world of Rithos III like a god's wrath made manifest. Massive warships, sleek and glimmering under the system's twin suns, cast long shadows over the planet's surface. Thousands of drop ships cut through the atmosphere in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting the golden hues of the sky. It was a spectacle of dominance, an overwhelming display of power meant to break the spirit of resistance before the first shot was fired. Commander Veljun stood aboard the bridge of the inevitable Dominion, watching the operation unfold on a massive holographic display. Rows of officers worked at their stations, monitoring troop deployments and communication channels. The invasion was proceeding flawlessly. The humans have refused surrender, one of his aides reported, barely concealing his amusement. Veljun smirked. Of course they have. Their arrogance is almost admirable. He turned his gaze to the planet below. No matter. Within the hour, it will be over. On the surface, the city of New Anchorage braced for war. The humans had fortified their streets with makeshift barricades, overturned vehicles, and repurposed industrial equipment. It was a pathetic attempt at resistance. The Imperial soldiers deployed in rigid formations, their powered exocets gleaming under the pale sun. Colonel Aaron Voss, commanding officer of the Human Defense Forces, crouched behind a reinforced checkpoint, eyes scanning the streets. He could hear them, the rhythmic stomp of thousands of boots, the mechanical whir of alien war machines. The Empire wasn't subtle. They wanted fear to set in before the killing began. Hold your fire, Voss murmured into his radio. Wait for my signal. A deep, synthetic voice boomed from the lead Imperial walker, its speakers amplifying the words across the ruined streets. This colony is now under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Empire. Surrender your arms and submit. Silence. Then, a single gunshot rang out. The Imperial officer standing in the open jerked backward, a clean hole punched through his helmet. A heartbeat later, hell erupted. From the rooftops, hidden snipers rained down precision fire, picking off enemy commanders before they could issue orders. Hidden explosive charges detonated along the main road, flipping armored transports like toys and sending fireballs into the sky. Human soldiers, previously unseen, emerged from alleyways and collapsed buildings, striking from the flanks before disappearing into the wreckage. The Imperials faltered. This was no desperate, disorganized rebellion. The humans were leading them exactly where they wanted them to go. Veljun's expression darkened as he observed the unexpected resistance. How are they coordinating so effectively? One of his officers hesitated before responding. They don't seem to be following a centralized command structure. Their units are adapting in real time. Veljun's jaw tightened. Impossible. But it wasn't. The humans didn't fight like the Empire. They didn't rely on rigid formations or predictable tactics. They were a fluid, ever-shifting force, changing strategy on the fly. A squad pinned down one moment would be striking from behind the next. When Imperials attempted to regroup, artillery fire shattered their ranks. When they fell back, they found themselves funneled into kill zones. Voss ducked behind cover as a plasma bolt melted a hole in the barricade beside him. He activated his radio. Hammer team, collapse the corridor! Seconds later, a controlled demolition brought down an entire building, crushing an advancing Imperial squad beneath a mountain of rubble. A nearby soldier, sweat-streaked and grinning, let out a breath. They didn't see that coming. Voss reloaded his rifle. They never do. The Imperials were unraveling. Their chain of command was in chaos. Officers fell one after another, And without them, the rank-and-file troops hesitated, waiting for orders that would never come. Veljun watched in horror as his forces, the finest soldiers of the Empire, were being systematically dismantled. He clenched his fists. Enough. Deploy the Titans. From the fleet above, enormous dropships descended, their hulls groaning under the weight of the Empire's deadliest ground units, bipedal war machines known as Titans. Each stood 30 feet tall, their armor impervious to small arms fire. As they landed, their energy cannons hummed to life, unleashing torrents of plasma that vaporized entire buildings. For the first time, the human forces faltered. A Titan crushed a barricade beneath its metal feet, sweeping the streets with its rapid-fire cannons. A squad of human soldiers was reduced to ash in an instant. Voss cursed. "We need heavy weapons now!" Within minutes, a new sound filled the air, a deep, rumbling roar. From underground bunkers, human combat mechs emerged, painted in urban camouflage, their railguns spinning to life. Unlike the towering Imperial Titans, these were smaller, faster, built for maneuverability over brute force. A mech pilot's voice crackled through the radio. "Time to level the playing field." The first shot split the air like a thunderclap. A Titan staggered as a tungsten slug punched through its cockpit, detonating its core in a spectacular fireball. Another mech launched a barrage of missiles, weaving between buildings to avoid return fire. Within moments, the battlefield had transformed yet again. The Empire's ultimate weapons were no longer invincible. Veljun slammed his fist against the command console. "This isn't possible. They shouldn't be capable of this level of resistance." His aide swallowed hard. "Sir, we may have underestimated them." Veljun turned on him, fury in his eyes. "No. They have simply prolonged the inevitable." He straightened. "Send in the second wave. Full orbital bombardment authorization." A tense silence followed. The officer hesitated. "Sir, our forces are still on the ground." Veljun's voice was ice. "Collateral damage is acceptable. Do it." In orbit, the Empire's warships adjusted their positions. Targeting arrays locked onto the surface. Seconds later, beams of pure energy lanced downward, striking indiscriminately. Entire city blocks evaporated. Buildings collapsed under the onslaught. Fires spread unchecked. Voss ducked into cover as the ground trembled beneath him. "They're glassing the damn city!" "Orders, Colonel?" Voss's mind raced. They couldn't win this fight. Not directly. But they could make the Empire pay for every inch of ground they took. He exhaled sharply. "We're pulling back. Into the tunnels." The soldier gaped at him. "We're abandoning the city?" "We're denying them the battle they want," Voss corrected. "We fight on our terms now." As the remnants of the human forces disappeared into the underground networks, the Imperials marched forward, claiming victory over a city of ruins. But it was a victory paid for in blood. And it was only the beginning. The tunnels beneath New Anchorage were ancient, originally dug for mining, later expanded into a vast network of emergency shelters and transit routes. Now they served a new purpose: survival. Colonel Aaron Voss moved quickly, leading his forces deeper into the underground labyrinth. The dim emergency lights cast long shadows on the walls, flickering in protest against the tremors above. Distant explosions rumbled like an angry god tearing the city apart. "How many made it?" Voss asked, glancing at Sergeant Hall, one of his most trusted officers. Hall, his face streaked with soot, checked his data pad. "Rough count, 500 fighters, 200 civilians. Maybe more, but comms are spotty." Voss nodded. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to keep fighting. Enough to make the Empire regret ever setting foot here. A scout jogged up, breathless. "Sir, we found something. You need to see this." The room was vast, a relic from the mining days: steel supports, rusted machinery, tunnels branching in every direction. But it wasn't the architecture that held Voss's attention. It was the crates. Rows upon rows of them, all marked with faded military insignias from wars long past. "Is that?" Hall's voice trailed off as he pried one open. His eyes widened. Weapons. Heavy ones? Old, but still functional. Railguns, anti-tank launchers, crates of high-explosive charges. A forgotten stockpile, left behind when the government decommissioned the colony's defenses decades ago. Voss ran a hand over a missile casing, mind already calculating. This changes things. Hall grinned. Damn right it does. Above ground, the city was silent. No more human resistance, no more gunfire. Only smoldering ruins and the marching boots of Imperial soldiers. Commander Veljun strode through the destruction, his expression unreadable. His forces had taken the city, but it had cost them far more than expected. His second-in-command, Major Red His, approached. We've confirmed it, sir. The remaining human forces have retreated into the underground tunnels. Veljun exhaled slowly. Then we flushed them out. Red His hesitated. It won't be easy. Their tunnels are extensive. We don't have full schematics. Veljun's eyes darkened. Then we burn them down until there is nowhere left to hide. He turned to a nearby officer. Deploy seismic charges along the main sectors. I want every major passage collapsed. Any that remain open, send in the purge squads. The officer saluted. By your will, Commander. Veljun watched as his orders set the next phase in motion. The humans had proven resourceful, but they had no way out. Sooner or later they would break. Voss crouched behind a pile of rubble, watching the Imperials move through the tunnels. They came in squads of 6, their helmets outfitted with night vision optics. Their movements were precise, methodical. No wasted energy, no hesitation. But they were still making one fatal mistake. They were moving as if they were the hunters. Voss tapped his calm. Team 2, you're up. A muffled thump echoed through the passage as an explosive detonated, sending fire and debris cascading down from the ceiling. The Imperial squad was buried in an instant. Another patrol heard the blast and turned, weapons raised, only to be cut down in a crossfire from the shadows. Voss exhaled. Move! Before reinforcements arrive. His team advanced, melting back into the tunnels, vanishing before the enemy could react. Veljun's frustration boiled over as reports flooded in, squads vanishing, ambushes increasing. Every attempt to contain the humans ended with more dead soldiers. This isn't war, he muttered. This is pest control. Major Red His approached, his expression grim. Commander, our seismic charges have collapsed several passages, but it's unpredictable. If we keep using them, we might lose access to key areas before we eliminate them. Veljun's eyes narrowed. Then we force them out another way. He turned to his officers. Flood the lower tunnels with nerve gas. Seal the exits. They will suffocate or come running into our guns. Red His hesitated. Sir, there are civilians down there. Veljun didn't blink. Collateral damage. The order was given. Voss knew something was wrong before the first body hit the ground. A soldier stumbled, choking. His skin turned pale, eyes wide with panic. Then another dropped. And another. Voss grabbed his mask, slamming it over his face. The sickly sweet scent in the air confirmed his worst fear, nerve gas. They're gassing us. A soldier coughed, barely able to stand. Hall cursed. They're sealing us in. Panic threatened to spread. Civilians clutched their children, terrified. Soldiers scrambled for breath masks, but there weren't enough. Voss made a split-second decision. We're not dying in this hole. He pointed toward a secondary tunnel. That route leads up, toward the old refinery. We blow a hole through and fight our way out. Sir, we don't have enough explosives to. Voss grabbed a charge from the weapons cache. Then we improvise. They ran. The gas thickened behind them, consuming the tunnels like a creeping death. Soldiers carried those too weak to move. The blast door to the refinery was ancient, rusted shut. Voss planted the charge, set the timer. Get back! The explosion tore through the metal, sending fragments flying. Fresh air rushed in. Go, go, go! They emerged into the refinery, an industrial graveyard of pipelines and storage tanks, abandoned for years. And waiting for them were Imperial forces. Veljun stood at the forefront, weapon raised. His troops surrounded the exit, forming an impenetrable line. Voss exhaled. Well, we made it out of the tunnels. Hall tightened his grip on his rifle. Yeah. Now what? Veljun stepped forward. You have nowhere left to run, Colonel. Voss smirked. Who said we were running? A sharp whistle echoed through the air. Then came the first explosion. From above, a barrage of missiles rained down, fired from hidden mechs perched on the refinery's skeletal towers. The Imperials scrambled as the ground beneath them erupted in fire and shrapnel. The trap had reversed. Veljun barely had time to react before the battle began anew. And this time, the humans had the advantage. The refinery became a battlefield in an instant. Fire and shrapnel cut through the Imperial lines as hidden mechs launched their assault from above. Missiles streaked down, leaving trails of smoke before detonating among the enemy ranks. The first Titan to react tried to raise its energy shield, but a railgun slug punched through its visor, sending it toppling backward in a heap of molten metal. Colonel Aaron Voss wasted no time. Push forward! Take the refinery before they regroup! His soldiers surged ahead, ducking behind rusted pipelines and debris as they fired into the chaos. Commander Veljun barely dove for cover before a missile detonated behind him, sending his soldiers flying. He gritted his teeth, furious. This was supposed to be his victory. The humans should have been crushed in the tunnels, suffocated like vermin. Instead, they had turned the battlefield against him. Major Rettis crawled toward him, face bloodied. Commander, we need to pull back. We weren't prepared for a full-scale counterattack. Veljun snapped. There is no retreat. Deploy the reserves. We end this now. Rettis hesitated. Sir, we are the reserves. The words hung in the air. The realization settled in. Every squad, every Titan, every soldier the Empire had deployed to New Anchorage was already in the fight. There were no reinforcements left. Veljun's fury twisted into something colder. This war was slipping out of his grasp. Voss sprinted between cover as plasma bolts seared past him, cutting through metal like butter. The Imperials were still fighting, but their cohesion was crumbling. Hall slid next to him, breathless. We've got them on their heels, but we need to break them now. They'll regroup if we let them. Voss scanned the battlefield. Then he saw it, the main fuel depot. Target those storage tanks, he ordered. Blow them, and retake the whole damn place with them. Hall grinned. Now that's a plan. Veljun's comm crackled. Commander! The humans, they're targeting the fuel reserves. His blood ran cold. If those tanks ignited, the explosion would consume everything, the refinery, his remaining forces, him. They wouldn't dare, he muttered. But as he looked across the battlefield, he saw it, humans moving toward the depot, planting charges. Panic flared. He turned to Rettis. Kill them! Stop them now! Rettis was already barking orders, but it was too late. Voss pressed the detonator. A thunderous boom split the sky. Fire ripped through the refinery as the first tank exploded, triggering a chain reaction. One after another, fuel reserves burst, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The force knocked men off their feet, engulfing Imperial squads in a storm of flame and debris. Veljun barely had time to react before the shockwave hit him, slamming him against a steel pillar. His visor cracked. His body ached. Around him, his forces were in shambles. He struggled to stand. The battlefield was unrecognizable, half of it consumed by fire, the rest littered with the remains of his once glorious army. Through the smoke, figures emerged, humans, weapons raised. At their center, Colonel Voss, rifle aimed directly at Veljun. Veljun forced himself to his feet, seething. You dare! His voice was hoarse, filled with hate. Voss took a step closer, unwavering. Your invasion is over. Veljun let out a hollow laugh. You think you've won? He gestured to the burning wreckage. You've destroyed your own city to stop us. You're not warriors. You're animals. Voss didn't blink. And yet, we're the ones still standing. Veldren's fists clenched. His empire had promised him an easy conquest. Instead, he had found an enemy unlike any other. Not because of their numbers or their technology, but because of their refusal to break. He reached for his sidearm. A last act of defiance. A single shot rang out. Voss lowered his smoking rifle as Veldren collapsed. Silence followed. Then, from the surviving human forces, a sound rose: cheers, shouts of victory. The invincible empire had been brought to its knees. Hours later, as the fires burned low, Voss stood atop the ruined refinery, gazing at the remains of the battlefield. Hall approached. We did it! Voss exhaled. For now. Hall frowned. You really think they'll come back? Voss turned to him, eyes hard. They always do. But next time, they'll remember what happened here. He looked to the sky, where the Empire's remaining ships were fleeing orbit. This wasn't just a battle. It was a message. Humanity would never kneel.